Hey, what's going on, everybody? Back with another how-to. Today we're going to be doing the front wheel bearing on this 2020 370Z. Now this should fall in line with any Nissan 370Z, which is 2009 to 2020, so let's get into it now. Alright, so we have the car up in the air. First step, of course, is to remove the front wheel. So we're going to go ahead and get this thing off. 21 mil on an impact. Go ahead and fire these right out. Alright, so we got the wheel off. So now what I'm going to do, just to make this easier, we're going to have to disassemble the brakes and all that. I'm going to go ahead and turn the wheel all the way to the right, and that's just so I have better access to everything and I can easily slip all this off, and it just makes it an easier workroom. Now this is a 4-piston caliper. The 2 pistons are going to be a little bit different, of course, but I will provide torque specs for both the 4 and the 2 piston when we get back into the reassembly. But 4-piston caliper, Nissan. This is a 50th anniversary, so it's got the nice brakes. So let's go ahead and start with getting this caliper off. All right, so we're just going to be removing the entire caliper assembly with the pads and everything in it. So we really just have to break free 3 bolts. So we're going to go ahead and break free the 2 22 mil bolts, retaining the whole caliper assembly to the knuckle. And then we have this 12 mil right here, and that's holding the brake line just to give us enough play so we can back that off and move it. So we're going to go ahead and get this brake line off, and then we'll move on to the 2 22 mils. All right, so we're going to break free this 12. Get that right off. It's going to give us a little bit of playroom on this hose, just enough. And now we're going to go ahead and take off both of these 22s. So I got a 22 mil on an impact. All right. All right, there's one. There's 2. All right. All right, and once you get those bolts out, this whole assembly is just going to slide off. All right, you want to hold it because it's going to fall once you remove one of the last bolts. So if you remove this last or the bottom one last, it's going to fall out as soon as you remove it. But we got both of those out. This caliper is completely free. Now what I have here is an S-clip. It's something good to have on hand for brakes like these. And I'm just going to put it right there for right now. All right, so we got it out of the way. Don't want to damage anything. It's got it lightly resting right here with the S-clip. No pressure on the hose. It's holding it right in place. So now we can go ahead and move on to removing the rotor. All right, now if you're lucky, this might be loose, and you can slide this whole rotor right off, which will then expose the wheel bearing. But if not, there's a lot of easy ways to remove a rotor that's rust welded to the hub. You could take a rubber mallet, hit around it. That will protect the rotor from getting damaged or anything like that, and you could reuse the rotor, you know, something like that. So that would be my best suggestion, rubber mallet, if you got to remove the rotor and it's stuck rust welded to the hub, if it doesn't just slide off like it just did. But there we go, guys, full access to the wheel bearing. All right, so now that we have the rotor and the caliper whole brakes off, we have the wheel hub exposed, we can go ahead and get into removing the hub itself. All right, so this is held in with 4 17 millimeter bolts. All right, 4 17 millimeters in the back of the steering knuckle. So I'm just going to put a 17 on an extension, hit all 4 with the impact, and then we're going to go ahead and shoot these all right off. Now keep in mind, I do have the wheel turned this way, so it's going to make it easier to sneak in here with the impact, or you know, anything really. It'd be easier if you have the wheel turned. So all right, so I got a 17 mil on my impact. I'm going to go ahead and back these right out. 1, 2, got that caught. That top corner there. Out. And then we just have to get the bottom last one down here. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to turn the wheel the opposite way now, so that I expose that one easier and I could sneak in with the impact. All right, so we got the wheel turned the other way now, so now I have better access to that last one. I should be able to sneak this impact in here. Sorry if I'm blocking the camera, but not too much I can do. Right out, guys. All right, now if you're having trouble with these, if they've been in there for a while, maybe you have, you know, older 370, this is pretty new, so these are firing right out, but you could take a torch, a little propane torch, and just barely heat these up, and then with an impact or a breaker bar, they should come out. But sometimes you might have to use a little bit of heat to make this easier on yourself and for them to just come out as smooth as these are, but that's just a little tip if you have to, if you're not getting them out as easy as this. All right, now one more thing I want to do before we attempt to remove the whole assembly is I do want to take this ABS sensor out, and the reason is sometimes they can be obstructing the bearing when it's coming out. You know, sometimes you don't have to take it out, but in my case, I'm just going to take this off just to make it easier, just to be safe, and you know, just to be on the safe side. So that's a 10 mil. I'm just going to take a 10 mil on an impact, fire that right out. All right, 10 mil. Should come out pretty easy. Make sure you're careful with this because these are prone to breaking, and it's the last thing you want is your ABS light to come on. So there we go. We're going to move that safely out of the way, and I'm just going to go ahead and start this back off just so we don't lose it, and it will be there when we go to reinstall. All right, so now we have everything disassembled. We have the hub fully exposed, everything is off. We have the bolts broken loose out of all 4 mounting spots. All right, so hub is ready to come off. Let's go ahead and get this thing off. All right, so let's go ahead and get into getting this hub off. Now, there are numerous ways you can attempt to get a hub off. Sometimes they are really on there, you got to beat it off. You know, sometimes it's really on there, you're gonna have to, you know, beat the hub off with a mallet, with you know, a hard hammer, even a sledgehammer sometimes. This is new, and I'm hoping because of that it should be able to come off pretty easy. So we're going to try to go easy route before we start beating this thing with a hammer. But the reason we're doing this is because this car hit a curb really hard in the front passenger here, so that's why we're doing this. And you know, it was on an alignment machine. It was recommended to get a control arm done. Did the control arm, but just on the safe side, the owner wanted to put a new hub on this as well, so that's why we're doing it. But new hub's about to go on, so let's go ahead and get this old one off. All right, so like I said, I'm hoping this is going to be easy because this is a new hub. I have relocated this caliper. I put a bag around it and put it on a jack just to hold it in place because I'm going to be doing some banging here, and I don't want to have that fall from a hit and hit the ground or break the line or anything stupid. So put it to the side, mount it on the jack, good, stable, out of the way. So we're going to go ahead and start hitting this thing lightly. I'm going to try to get in here with a little hammer. And like I said, I'm hoping this is going to be easy. It should come out reasonably because it's only a year old. So I'm going to hit it right back here with a little hammer. And I'm going to take a punch and go through the dust shield and try to hit it on this side so we can get even hits on both sides and work this whole hub right out. All right. So I have a very small hammer. It's really nothing crazy. Might almost be too weak, but I'm hoping that this is going to come out with a little bit of effort, not much. Go ahead and do this punch. All right, see, I got a punch through the back of this dust shield. All right, and it's starting to work its way out of alignment, so those holes are moving, which is good, which means this thing is freeing up. Come back here again. All right, so we've made some progress. You can see this is loose. All right, so now I'm gonna try to move this out of the way as best as I can. And I've upped my hammer here, so this is a small 3-pound mallet. Just gonna do the same thing, hit on both sides, punch on this side, and on this side I'm just gonna go direct, and I should be able to start working and engine this thing out. All right, so after bouncing back and forth on both sides here, as you can see, we got some separation right in there. So I'm gonna keep working it, starting this side with the punch, should start coming out. And there it is, came out. Just be careful with your dust shield. We're gonna clean all this up and then we'll go ahead and get into the reinstall. All right, so I got this cleaned up. I took some brake cleaner and cleaned all in here. Even took a little bit of red Scotch-Brite to get rid of the oxidation and rust around the edge and on the inner portion here. So here is our new hub assembly. This is a OEM Nissan hub assembly, and there is the part number right there. It is D0202-4GA0J&W. Okay, so that is the OEM hub assembly. It's a little bit different than our OEM hub assembly that came on the vehicle, but as you can see, it is a Nissan hub assembly. So now one thing we want to pay attention to before we install it is the orientation. Now if you look at this, it has an arrow right there, this arrow should be pointing up. So that's how you know this arrow should be pointing up to the sky. And then this would be top. So we need to align these holes on this one because this doesn't have an arrow. So if you look, hole, 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 one at the bottom, one at the bottom. So this is the top, as this is the top with the arrow because it has two here, two here. So that's how we know the correct orientation. Sometimes different brands of hub assemblies will have like a mark on the top, like marking the top dead center almost, you can say, just to let you know what the top center is. But that's how I figured it out. So we're gonna go ahead and start pushing this thing into the steering knuckle. All right, guys, time for the installation. So I have the dust shield here. She's a hair deformed, but not really too bad. Should actually fall pretty good in place once we actually put the hub on, but make sure you have this in the correct orientation. Obviously you want all 4 holes, and you want the open square here showing the ball joint. All right, so now I have the hub. Make sure I have the 2 holes at the top. All right, so we want to get that orientated correctly. And this is going to take a little bit of effort, but it should start falling into place. All right, got the shield right about where I want it now. I'm just going to lightly take a rubber mallet and just kind of seat that into place, okay? And then from here, I can take one of my 4 17mm bolts and I can go ahead and start it through the back. And then once I get these started, I'm just going to finger tight all 4 into place. And that should hold the dust shield and everything into place so we don't have to worry about anything falling or coming out of orientation. All right, so I pretty much have all 4 of our bolts finger tight here. All right, so I'm just going to finish pulling them in by lightly hitting them with the impact. So I'm going to go into X pattern. I'm going to go here, drop to the bottom, go back up to the top, go back to the bottom. So we're just going to bounce from corner to corner. I'm just going to lightly pull these in, and then we're going to torque them to spec. All right, so I'm going to start up at this top one. We're just going to lightly hit these with the impact to pull them in. All right, down to this bottom one, up to this top one. All right, so I have all 3 of those locked in. I'm going to get that bottom corner one just by turning the wheel, and then I'll seat that one home with the impact. All right, so I pretty much have all 4 of these seated. Now these wheel hub 17 mils are 65 foot-pounds, okay? 65 foot-pounds, so I'm gonna lock my torque wrench in, 65 foot-pounds, and we're gonna go in the same pattern we just did in the X pattern. I'm gonna start here, go to the bottom, go back up to the top, come back to the bottom, and we'll get all these locked in at 65 foot-pounds. All right, torque wrench locked in, 65 foot-pounds. We're working on that one right there. All right, there we go. We got that top one locked in. So now that that one's locked in, we're gonna jump to this bottom one right there. We're gonna go ahead and get that one locked in. All right, so we're gonna go ahead and lock this bottom one in. I have it turned the opposite way now, so should be able to sneak my torque wrench in here. Yep, we got it right on there, and we're gonna go ahead and torque this to spec. All right, guys, we got that one locked in. So now we're gonna jump back up to the top, lock this one in, and then finish off with that bottom one. All right. Top one locked in. Last one is this bottom corner down here. All right, guys, all 4 17mm bolts holding the hub are now torqued to 65 foot-pounds. All right, guys, so we have the hub installed. All 4 of our 17 mils are now torqued to 65 foot-pounds. So now all we have to do is reassemble the brakes. So we're gonna go ahead and slide our rotor back on here. Just gonna slide right over our new studs. Should go in really clean. And what I like to do when I'm doing brakes or something like this is I take a lug nut and I put it all the way on just to hold the rotor in place so it doesn't flex or move while we're reinstalling all the brakes. All right, so rotor is on. Now we can go ahead and take our caliper off of our resting spot, put it back into its orientation, and hopefully we can get it to slide right over this rotor, and we can go ahead and reattach our 222 mils and get the caliper back attached. All right, guys, so we got our caliper out of the bag, off from the side. We'll go ahead and see if we can get this thing just slid right back over here. It's going to be tight, I'll tell you that. especially with this type of braking setup. There it is. Just took a little bit of finagling and I got it to go right back over, guys. So I'm going to grab one of our 22 mils. I'm going to start it on the top one and we're going to get those finger tight. All right, so we have both of our 22 mils here, finger tight. So we're going to go ahead and torque these to spec. Now the torque spec is 91 foot-pounds. Okay, now keep in mind this is the 4-piston Nissan caliper. All right, so 4-piston. The torque spec for the knuckle bolts is 91 foot-pounds. If you have a 2-piston caliper, this is the torque specs for that right here. That is the caliper bracket and the caliper. All right, so that is both of the bolts that you need torque specs for. So that is a torque specs for a 2-piston. This is a 4-piston, 22 mils, 91 pounds. Let's go ahead and get them torqued to spec. All right, we got the top one locked in. I'm just going to do the same thing for the bottom. All right, we got both of those 22 mils locked in, 91 foot-pounds. So really the last thing here in our assembly is this brake line here, this hard brake line with our 12 mil bolt. So I'm going to go ahead, get that 12 mil started. All right, so I'm just finger tighten that in. And then I'm just going to snug that in with a ratchet and that should be perfectly fine. And then we'll have everything reassembled. There we go, guys. Brake hose bolt, nice and snug. All right, and before we deem this finished, we do have one last step, and that is reinstalling our ABS sensor. So if you remember, we did take it out just for precautionary measures. So should slide right into place just like that. 10 mil. I'm just going to finger tight this 10 mil, and I'm going to do the same thing I did with the brake hose, the hard brake hose line. I'm just going to snug this in, and it should be just fine. Don't have to go crazy. I have it finger tight, and now I'm just going to send it home with a nice little snug on a ratchet. There you go, guys. Nice and snug, nothing crazy. All right, guys, so we are finished on the front wheel hub on this 370Z. Just make sure you give the rotor a spin. Make sure you don't hear any crazy noises, scratching, or anything like the dust shield touching or anything of that nature. But it looks like we're in good shape. We got everything back together, torqued to spec. So I hope this helped with replacing the wheel bearing on your 370Z. Make sure you stay tuned because you never know when I might be wrenching on this thing again. And until next time, guys.